Oh. I like the stripes. And these are like, yeah. Joe Fresh is cute stuff. So is that
weekend.
No, I got really good at service party parties. And I have a really cute sweater Joe Fresh, and it's like a beige black stripes, and there's a little bit of sparkles on the stripes, so it's kind of like cute with holidays, but not too dressy. Same thing, I just wear a cute sweater and a
I need personal shopping. Okay. No.
I see that for You're so cute.
This is my sister-in-law. She was like giving me a shirt on a white peanut butter embroidered, just all the tank top, like the sleeveless. She said it before.
Probably scrambling. That's a good place. Yeah. I wish I had gone to so I don't want to that's fine too. Yeah. It was actually the store, at the shelter, when I go to it. And they own the store and they sell it.
Yeah.
I did.
I'm pretty good. Hey, Brett. That'd be a question for Haley. She has a stick there. Haley?
Yeah.
Do you have presentations on a stick?
I do the stick should
Yeah.
be right there.
Hudson House.
Yeah, very good things. No, it's true. I just do.
Makes more sense than that. Yeah. Okay, no, I think we're good. All good. All right, thanks, Brian. You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't put 0%. Oh yeah, there's a version 2. I know. No. Is it still timber? 6. Actually, not bad as that. I'd rather have snow now and have it go away than lots. They're going to give us this weather. Maybe we'll, maybe we'll. So it has something. The kids are still which is fine.
Grosier.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Everyone have a seat, please. We'll get going.
How do we have to have a seat? You should be able to stand.
Well, you can if you want. Okay, welcome. Everyone ready? Okay. Any declarations of interest? None? Confirmation of minutes of November the 24th, 2015. Carried. Okay, item number 1 is the, oh, sorry, I forgot to read my little doodah ditty here. This is for the record. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7 on today's agenda. For the items listed above, only those who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Municipal Board. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Municipal Board if Council does not adopt an amendment within 120 days of receipt of the application for zoning and 180 days for an official plan amendment. A comment sheet is available at the door if anyone wants to speak who hasn't yet registered. So back to number 1, the zoning bylaw amendment for 335 Saint Laurent Boulevard and part of 1191 Montreal Road. And this is about Rockcliffe, and Councillor Nussbaum has got 2 motions. One is an amendment and one is a motion, and this is the motion that Planning Committee recommend Council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-2250 for 335 Saint Laurent Boulevard and part of 1191 Montreal Road to permit approximately 5,300 residential dwelling units and a range of commercial and employment land uses at the site of the former Canadian Forces Base Rockcliffe as detailed in documents 2 and 3. Councillor Nussbaum?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an issue that's come before planning before in terms of the CDP and the secondary plan. Today we are just finalizing the zoning. I have a technical amendment that addresses 2 errors that we caught late after the report went out that change the proposed zoning as follows. Area F from R41 as shown in the attached revised document to R3VV by changing the mapping and legend to include a new area Z in which proposes to rezone the area to R1W as shown in the attached revised document 2, and by changing the proposed zoning on the remainder of area E from R4 to R3VV shown in the attached revised document. In document 3 by adding zoning details related to R1W and R3VV, and lastly in document 4 by revising the proposed rezone area maps to include the R1W and R3VV zones as shown on the attached revised document 4. And Chair, it's important to note this represents no change from the initial plan, from the CDP, from the secondary plan. It was merely a mistake in the sense of we didn't catch the nuance in the zoning that ought to have been reflected in the report. So do you want to deal with that motion first?
Yes. So on the technical amendment, is that carried? Okay, so on the motion as amended? Carried. And now, Councillor Nussbaum?
Yeah, in light of the fact that the zoning took us a little bit longer to bring to planning, and the fact that we don't have another council meeting after tomorrow until the end of January, I'm recommending that Planning Committee allow this item to rise to council tomorrow to allow the Canada Lands Company to start finalizing their land deals in the RFP process. I think in light of the extensive public consultation that they've undertaken, and I should acknowledge that there are members of the Public Advisory Committee here with us this morning, then I think it does make sense in this case to allow the expeditious procession of this important development.
I think today's the 200th meeting.
201st.
Yeah, 201st meeting. Yep. So for this to go to council tomorrow is carried. Thank you. Of course, item number 2 is the zoning bylaw amendment for 4495, 4499, 4509, and 4515 Innes Road, and the Planning Committee recommend Council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 for that address, shown in document 1, to permit a mix of non-residential uses, including a community center, place of assembly, place of worship, and medical facility, as detailed in document 2. I have only Bill Holzman that is registered to speak. Mr. Holzman, where are you? Oh, there you are. If, are there any questions from committee? If we carry this, do you need to speak? Thank you very much. So is this item carried? Carried. Thank you, everybody. Okay, item number 3 is the zoning bylaw amendment for 570 Hazeldean Road. That Planning Committee recommend Council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 for 570 Hazeldean Road to permit development of a residential subdivision with detached and townhouse dwellings, neighborhood and district parks, open space corridors, stormwater management blocks, and school site as shown in document 1 and detailed in document 2. Does anyone have any questions on this one? I can tell you that I did ask Mr. Smith and Ms. Snedden if this is not a prime example of where we could start to incorporate some of what we've learned and agreed to as good practice on the Building Better, Smarter Suburbs. So, for example, if you noticed in the report, there was comment about a holding symbol to look at whether there's capacity for the stormwater. One of the, with the Building Better, Smarter Suburbs, one of the areas that we have moved very far on is going back to the future and using some of our parks as dry ponds, and they've been extremely effective and a good use of land. So they are, so heads up is that they are going to be looking at incorporating in the next stage some of those wherever possible. And we will have, we're going to have a report to council of at least a, in the council, what do you call the room there? What's that room? Council, not the chambers. What do you call the room that we have, where we have meetings sometime? Lounge. So sort of like a show and tell there that the media will be able to come, because we have moved very far. That'll happen in the first quarter sometime. Okay, so on this one is, oh yeah, we have Mike Zalagi. Is this your first time coming here?
It's been a couple of years.
Yeah, because I don't remember. So you're with Fulton. So if we carry this item, you don't need to speak? Okay, thank you. And so do we have, the only motion we have on this is to move it to council the next day. So on this item, on the motion, is it carried? Thank you. And we have a motion, Vice Chair Tierney, that you're moving to have it go before, to go to council tomorrow.
Great. Therefore, be resolved that this report proceed to City Council on December 9th, 2015 for consideration.
Carried. Okay, that item's carried. Thank you. And so the next one is designation of the Boyd House, 173 Huntmar Drive, under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. The Planning Committee recommend that Council issue a notice of intention to designate Boyd House at that address under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act according to Statement of Cultural Heritage Value attached as Document 5. And following this, we also have the zoning bylaw amendment. But on this one, anyone have any questions on the designation? Miguel, we are here. You don't need to speak if we carry it. Okay, thank you. Okay, so it's carried. Next item is the zoning for 173 Huntmar Drive, the recently approved, almost heritage designated. The Planning Committee recommend Council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 for 173 Huntmar Drive to permit a mixed-use development with residential and commercial uses as detailed in document 2. So, Miguel, you're here on this one again. I just wanted to say, I think it was early on in the time of our newly created Built Heritage Subcommittee that this came before us, and there was quite a good deal of shock from the owner, as I recall. But the good thing is, and it says it in the report, that really it's been a great collaboration with staff and a willingness to work on this. So I wanted to personally take the time to thank you, Leslie, and you, Miguel, for the work that you've done, and you, Councillor Kadri, to get us to where we are today. Does anyone have any questions? Do you have any questions of Mr. Tremblay?
Madam Chair, I just have two questions on the report that's come with this
Of
item.
staff?
Of staff, yes.
Okay, so hang on, and I'll come back and ask you again. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam
So
Chair.
staff may want to come forward, because Councillor Kadri is going to ask questions. Mr. Smith? Oh, okay. Derek?
Just to be clear, Mr. Chair,
Moody?
are the questions related to the zoning or the heritage designation?
No, the questions are regarding zoning and some of the items mentioned in the report. So on page 3, a holding zone will be applied to the lands which will be permitted to be lifted when the necessary infrastructure is in place to satisfactory service the development. Now, I know in the staff did receive some comments from a Fairbanks Community Association regarding that, and I just want to reiterate from your perspective that when will the H zone be lifted, and what conditions are there for that H zone going forward?
Through you, Madam Chair, at this point, we anticipate there's still the Canada West pumping station that needs to be built and services through other landowners to be coordinated. So we anticipate with the construction of the pump station, which will take about 2 years, and that's beginning to be started, with the other servicing, it's really a best guess since it involves other landowners, but we're estimating that this land would be able to be serviced maybe within 4 to 5 years.
Thank you for that. And in terms of the hedgerow, that again was brought up by the Community Association about its protection along the laneway, and you do mention in the report that it will be protected. So could you just explain that a little bit further, please?
Yes. The plan has gone through many changes, and originally the road was further south, east-west road, and the hedgerow wasn't going to be maintained, but working with the applicant and based on community comments and the urban design review comments, we shifted the road further north where the existing laneway is accessing the Boyd House, allowing us to preserve the hedgerow, which we worked with our parks planner as well, that we've agreed that we're going to take it as parkland to ensure the preservation, and that was one of the main things the community raised, an important factor to maintain that hedgerow and the Heritage House.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone have any other questions? So if we are going to carry this item, Mr. Tremblay, you don't need to speak? Well, thank you very much for coming out today, and thanks again. Pass that along to your property owner. So is that item carried? Thank you. Now, number 6 is the comprehensive zoning bylaw anomaly amendments, and they are scattered through various wards. Does anyone have any questions on the anomalies report? We have Murray White from Novatech. Did you want to speak to this? So if we carry it, you're pleased? Just punch? Thank you. So is this item carried? Now, Vice Chair Tierney, we have a motion to move this one to council tomorrow because, do you all know why? It has regard to the Arts Court and the work that's happening there.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. That therefore be it resolved that this report proceed to City Council on December 9th, 2015 for consideration.
Thank you. Okay, so the number 7 is the update to the environmental noise control guidelines. We do have a speaker. Are there any questions from committee before we go to the speaker? And I would also point out that we did receive quite a detailed report submission from Mr. Michel Haddad that we all received, and at your desk you're going to have, I asked Mr. Smith to give us, to make it, focus it, because it's a very long report, and to give us some information. Councillor Hubley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question about on page, it says page 3 in the report that I have, but I'm also not showing the page 4, so I'm not sure on the page number, but it talks about acoustic barriers and moving away from them. And my question is, if we're still on a Class 5 residential, would we not still be looking at using acoustic barriers to protect the homes from the road, noise?
Madam Chair, there's a very strong emphasis in the updated guidelines to look at introducing other measures, urban design measures, how you organize the layout of the land to deal with the mitigation of noise. If you have existing situations where you've got an existing road, there are still retrofits, but again, the direction is to try to look at alternatives to acoustic barriers, really looking at acoustic barriers as the means of last resort to address the noise mitigation issue. And this is really driving from a recognition that we really need to be much more sort of sensitive to the impacts of these noise barriers on how they divide communities. So again, it still is an option that's available, but it's really being looked at as an option of last resort, and we really should be looking at as many other alternatives focused on urban design and how we organize the land to deal with the mitigation of potential noise impacts.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Really gives us the flexibility we didn't have before.
Yes.
And, you know, in some of our, particularly suburban communities, you see you'd be going along a very large arterial road, a Strandherd Drive, for example, and you see this one wall that, you know, it's like, it divides that community where it didn't before, because we had other ways of dealing with it. And so we didn't have those options, and we automatically had to go to the fencing before, but now we're going to look, as Mr. Smith very aptly said, ahead of time.
So it'll be things like berms and
Absolutely.
So on. Like, what I find with these walls, because I have some of them as you do, where there's breaks in the walls for pathways, for example, it creates a tunnel for the noise and really increases the impact on the community in these openings along the wall.
And just to build on that, along Strandherd Drive up closer to the 416, the subdivisions that were built there, in the plan of subdivision, in their ownership, it actually says that you will get upgraded glass, etc., free air conditioning systems, etc., because you're not going to have a sound attenuation fence. So there's various ways of doing it. Some of the other areas too, they have eyes on the street, but it's a street within the street. It uses up more land, but it does provide an opportunity that's a safer community from a SEPDED perspective. The one wall that I referred to initially is so high that the sound is actually bouncing into that and then going right back across the road to the people that live there that never had a problem before. So, Councillor Brockington?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to get an understanding of how this impacts current project. We're looking at widening the airport parkway, for example, and some of the mitigation initiatives that are being reviewed right now are noise, and what staff are proposing are noise walls. Is that in jeopardy if this is approved? Not at all? That will still be one of the main solutions to the noise issue?
Yes, it always is an option, and again, I think even on these capital projects, there's an intention that the Infrastructure Services Department, when they're involved in these projects, look to other measures that can be effective in mitigating noise. But at the end of the day, if there's no other options and we need to do noise mitigation, and this is the best that we can do, the opportunity is still there for the introduction of those barriers. I think as part of the introduction of those barriers, there would also be a desire to introduce elements that can soften the appearance of those barriers so they're not as harsh on the urban environment.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we do have a speaker. It is Thomas Cooper. Thomas, are you here? Come forward, please. You're with Gradient Wind Engineering. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be before this committee to discuss the latest update to the environmental noise control guidelines. As a seasoned environmental noise consultant, I've had the pleasure of facilitating the design of residential and commercial developments in the City of Ottawa. I am before this committee today to voice my grave concerns over the City's mandate for City staff and engineers to use the software program STAMPSON. The environmental noise control guidelines require all traffic noise assessments to be predicted using the software program STAMPSON, which was developed in the late 1980s and early 1990s. In short, STAMPSON as a whole is remarkably inaccurate and inefficient. Addressing its inaccuracies, STAMPSON is based off theory developed in the 1980s, which is rarely, if not ever, updated. In addition, STAMPSON has extremely limited capabilities and applications when assessing noise levels in an urban environment. In many instances, consultants like myself have had to recommend noise barriers in locations that otherwise do not require them. We cannot accurately predict traffic noise levels in the real world using STAMPSON. With today's technology, we are able to utilize the City of Ottawa's engineering resources while implementing the latest traffic noise software, which are approved by the International Standards Organization, the ISO, and the United States Department of Transportation. STAMPSON is not recognized as a standard in any other country. Now, regarding STAMPSON's inefficiencies, this software is not capable, or compatible rather, with today's computer operating systems. Simply put, you cannot purchase an off-the-shelf computer and operate STAMPSON directly. To this end, there is no technical support for STAMPSON at the Ministry of the Environment. There are no personnel available to address questions about the program's functionality. In essence, the program is obsolete. One concern that city staff had presented to me is the perceived cost of replacing STAMPSON. This concern is entirely unjustified. In all other areas of engineering, including environmental noise, the city does not mandate a specific piece of software to be used. Contained within these very same guidelines are requirements for stationary noise equipment, rooftop equipment, generators, and such, which we are able to use any software available. If we are able to use third-party software to assess stationary noise, structural engineering, and other engineering analysis, why shouldn't we be allowed to use third-party software for traffic noise? The City of Ottawa does not need to purchase new software. They need to stop enforcing the use of the wrong software. The City of Ottawa's objectives with the ENCG are to reduce noise barrier installations and improve urban design. In addition, cutting all unnecessary costs in order to maintain budget and save tax dollars. Replacing STAMPSON will single-handedly, 1, reduce costs for the city and developers by not recommending unnecessary noise barriers. 2, reduce the amount of time city staff and engineers need to spend assessing traffic noise impacts. Thirdly, improve urban landscape by not having noise barriers throughout the city. 4, accurately assess environmental noise levels using internationally approved noise software. And lastly, 5, allow the city to stay current, as these new softwares are regularly updated and reviewed by a body of environmental noise experts. As we know, the environmental noise control guidelines are based on the Ministry of Environment's recommendations for noise. This being said, the Ministry of the Environment does not require municipal governments to use STAMPSON or the theory that STAMPSON automates. The City of Ottawa is free to implement any noise model or software it deems appropriate. As a city striving to stay at the forefront of technology, why are we using software from 25 years ago? There is no justified reason to continue using STAMPSON. As an example to this, our organization had the pleasure of helping to analyze the traffic noise in the Longfield subdivision in Barrhaven. The complexities of that environment, the project itself, STAMPSON was incapable of modeling every factor in the environment, every type of blockage, every type of house, and existing barrier or berm. We felt at the time that we were overestimating noise levels, and in some cases, we were having to recommend noise barriers that need not be there. And this is down to having to use STAMPSON.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. And obviously, we weren't expecting you to come out and talk against the company that you did. But having said that, I'm going to go over to Councillor Hubley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can we get a copy of your presentation to this? Okay, and would staff be willing to take us a direction to review the comments made about the software and come back to us with some direction on where we should go?
Yes, we can do that.
Great, and possibly we can look at this under Building Better Suburbs or the standards review. It might fit in there, but we'll leave it up to you.
Fair enough. Yes,
Thank
we
you.
can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So that's what we will do, and thank you for coming out. There were, actually, to tell you the truth, you mentioned the Longfields area, and there's the motion that, how many years ago was it, John, that drove the this review?
I think it was...
2011?
I'm not sure it was that long ago.
Anyways, it was me.
Probably at least 5-6 years.
It was me that moved it because we hadn't done a review, and I was very frustrated by all the walls that were being built in a community that really had so much green space, forests, schools, etc. So, and that was the Longfields area. It's one of them. So thank you for coming out, and please make sure that we have your contact information. You can provide it to you, Mr. Smith. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is this item carried then, or are there any further questions? Questions? Hang on a second.
So Stamson is baked into the noise guidelines to a large extent. If we pass this today, what are the implications with respect to being able to change? Should we find that there are other software packages that are as good or equivalent?
Madam Chair, the guidelines are being approved, but they are guidelines, and the guidelines are made up of different components, and the thrust of those different components are really parts 1, 2, and 3 dealing with environmental noise related to land use, transportation corridors, and then improvement initiatives. Where the reference to the Stamson is actually in an appendix, and the appendix provides details around what needs to be looked at and considered in developing a noise study, and it does reference Stamson as the model that is available, that can be used, but it doesn't preclude the ability to look at other techniques in assessing noise implications if those are found to be more appropriate or more relevant to the circumstances at hand.
So the feeling is it's not prescriptive. We can. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So is this item carried? Thank you, and thank you, staff, for your work on this. And the last item we have today on the agenda is the development charge deferrals. That Planning Committee recommend the Council approve that the City Clerk and Solicitor be delegated authority to execute a development charge deferral agreement for a period not to exceed 24 months in respect of the proposed development at 929 Richmond Road. And the City Clerk and Solicitor be directed to conduct a review of the deferral of development charge policy and to bring forward a report to Committee and Council at the time of the midterm governance review. Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Mark on this one? No? Councillor Shirelli?
What's the point of the review for midterm governance?
Pardon me?
What's the direction of the review at midterm governance?
I don't know.
Madam Chair, it would be to look at all aspects of the deferral policy as it says in the report. It has not been reviewed since it came into being back around 1992. So we'll consider all the aspects of the deferral policy, Madam Chair.
Good. Okay. Thank you. So is this item carried? And we have a motion from Councillor Vice Chair Tierney.
Great. Similar to the others, Madam Chair, since there's no meeting until January 27th, we're looking to move this report. Therefore, be it resolved that this report go to City Council on December 9th, 2015 for consideration.
Is that carried? Thank you. Any notices of motion? What about inquiries? Any inquiries? Other business? Well, I would like to say with other business, thank you for an interesting and successful year, first year of our planning committee. I think we first met December 2014 when half of us were fresh from the election field, and they're still fresh. Well, maybe a little bit tattered around the edges now. But I look forward to next year. It's going to be, again, a very incredibly busy year for the Planning Committee, and with our support, you can see that how many active built heritage applications that we have coming forward as well. And it's all part of what we do in building a great Ottawa. I want to thank Mr. Mizzi and all your staff, and all you reporters that come out and write about what we're doing so that others can be informed. Merry Christmas to everyone, and we'll see you January 26th, 2016. Adjourned? Thank you.